MP Andrew Jackson course. Let's get started. There are 5 units as you can see here. The recommended textbook is Making of America, Andrew Jackson, Amazing. Chat, let's get started. Unit 1, Early Life. Andrew Jackson was born on the western frontier of the Carolinas on March 15, 1767, an area that was in dispute between North Carolina and South Carolina. Andrew's father died 4 weeks before his birth. His mother had a hatred of Britain which was passed down to young Andrew Jackson when he was at a young age. He wanted to enlist in the American Revolution, but due to his mother Elizabeth's insistence, he was only able to enlist at age 13 as a courier. He witnessed the Battle of Waxhaws in May 1780, which intensified anti-British sentiment, and was present at the Battle of Hanging Rock, and was captured in 1781 by the British alongside his brother in a relative's home, supposedly sent by his patriot neighbor. A British officer demanded to have his shoes polished by Andrew Jackson, but he refused, so the officer slashed him with a sword, leaving scars on his left hand and head, showcasing his arrogant personality. Then they were taken to a POW camp and contracted smallpox. They returned to their mother from a prisoner exchange, but his brother Robert died 2 days later while Andrew Jackson recovered. His mother soon died from cholera, which made Andrew Jackson an orphan at age 14. After the end of the American Revolution, he studied law. In 1784, he left the Waxhaws region to study law in Salisbury, North Carolina, where he studied law. During the winter of 1787, his friend John McNary helped him get appointed as a prosecuting attorney in the area that is now called Tennessee. He stopped in Jonesboro, where he purchased his first slave called Nancy, where he also fought his first duel. He then moved to the new town of Nashville. There he met Rachel Donaldson, who was in a poor relationship with Captain Louis Robards, who was reported to abuse her. They become romantically involved, and Robards filed a divorce for Rachel in 1793. They married in 1794. In 1804, he bought a 425-acre plantation near Nashville called Hermitage and used slave labor to become one of the most elite families of Tennessee. In May of 1806, he fought a duel with Charles Dickinson, with their dispute starting from a forfeited horse race. Dickinson fired first, which hit Jackson in the chest. He returned fire but missed. Then he shot a second shot and it killed Dickinson. This severely tarnished his reputation. Later that year, he became involved with Aaron Burr's attempt to conquer Spanish Floridia. Military career. On June 18, 1812, the U.S. declared war on Britain due to the impressment of American soldiers for British ships for the Napoleonic Wars. The War of 1812 would begin. Andrew Jackson was incredibly happy and wanted to attack the British. He immediately offered to raise volunteers for the war, but was not enlisted in the U.S. Army until early January 1813. He enlisted over 2,000 volunteers who headed to New Orleans to defend a possible British attack. When his forces reached the town of Natchez, historical city in nowadays Mississippi, they were ordered to halt by General Wilkinson, commander of New Orleans, who was hated by Andrew Jackson. A little later, Secretary of War, John Armstrong, ordered Andrew Jackson to hand over his troops to Wilkinson and disband. On the contrary, Jackson did not disband his troops and marched his troops back to Nashville, earning the name Hickory for his toughness. In August 1813, the Muskogee Nation, called the Creeks by white settlers, was divided on whether to fight the Americans to prevent westward expansion or to not fight. The leader of the war faction, Red Stick, was called Red Eagle, who led his troops to commit a massacre of American troops at Fort Mims. Governor Willie Blount of Tennessee called out troops to combat the Muskogee, and Andrew Jackson was called as the commander. He went south and was destroying Creek villages along the way and defeating bands of Red Stick warriors at the Battle of Tallushatchee and the Battle of Talladega. In late January 1814, Jackson's troops were reinforced by the 39th U.S. Infantry Regiment. His force attacked a Red Stick fort at Horseshoe Bend on the Tallapoosa River, and almost all the Creek warriors were destroyed, which led to the surrender of Red Eagle. The Treaty of Fort Jackson required the surrender of Creek land to the USA, and Andrew Jackson was made brevet major general. The British launched 10,000 troops and 60 ships toward New Orleans, the most so far, under Major General Edward Pakenham. Andrew Jackson arrived in New Orleans on December 1, 1814, and immediately declared martial law due to the city's Native American and Spanish inhabitants. The British arrived in mid-December. As the British advanced up the east bank of the Mississippi River, Jackson's troops constructed a fortified position to intercept them. The British launched a frontal assault upon the fortress but were made easy targets for American shooters. The British suffered 2,000 casualties while the Americans only suffered 71. Jackson's victory made him a national hero. However, news came that the War of 1812 had ended by the Treaty of Ghent signed in December 1814, which assured American control of the region between Mobile and New Orleans. After the war concluded, Andrew Jackson remained in control of the troops in the southern half of the United States and continued to oust Native Americans with many unfair treaties. Jackson also became involved in Florida, where a former British port called Negro Fort by the Americans for the large number of escapees there. Andrew Jackson destroyed the garrison in the summer of 1816. In December 1817, the Secretary of War ordered Jackson to lead a campaign against the Seminoles, Native Americans in Florida. His campaigns led Spain to cede Florida to the U.S. Politics first became central to Andrew Jackson's life during the Panic of 1819. When Congress reduced the size of the U.S. military and eliminated Jackson's position as general. As a result, James Monroe appointed him the first territorial governor of the newly acquired Florida in 1821. In 1822, Jackson agreed to run in the 1824 United States presidential election and was nominated by the Tennessee legislature in July. By that time, the Federalist Party had already collapsed, leaving the main candidates as William H. Crawford, John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay, and John C. Calhoun. At first, Jackson was expected to serve only as a stalking horse candidate to keep Tennessee's electoral votes away from Crawford. However, he unexpectedly gained support beyond Tennessee and soon emerged as a serious contender in the election. During his presidential campaign, Andrew Jackson also sought one of Tennessee's seats in the U.S. Senate. His political allies believed that defeating the incumbent, John Williams, would strengthen his national reputation. The Tennessee legislature elected Jackson in October 1823, and his careful attention to his senatorial responsibilities earned him an appointment to the Committee on Military Affairs. However, he generally avoided participating in debates or introducing legislation. Instead, Jackson used his time in the Senate to build political alliances and reconcile with former rivals. Meanwhile, John Henry Eaton continued promoting Jackson's presidential campaign by updating his biography and publishing a series of widely circulated pseudonymous letters that portrayed Jackson as a defender of Republican liberty. In 1824, many members of the Democratic-Republican Party in Congress boycotted the Congressional Caucus, causing the authority to select nominees to shift toward state legislatures and nominating conventions. Andrew Jackson received the nomination from a Pennsylvania convention, which elevated him from a regional figure to a leading national candidate. After Jackson secured Pennsylvania's support, John C. Calhoun withdrew from the presidential race. Jackson then went on to win the nomination in 6 additional states and placed a strong second in 3 others, further strengthening his position as a major contender in the election. In the final results of the 1824 United States presidential election, Andrew Jackson won 42% of the popular vote and received the largest share of the electoral vote, earning 99 electoral votes from states across the South, West, and Mid-Atlantic. He was also the only candidate to gain support outside of his primary regional base, while John Quincy Adams dominated New England, William H. Crawford carried Virginia and Georgia, and Henry Clay won 3 western states. Because no candidate secured the required majority of 131 electoral votes, the election was decided by the House of Representatives under the 12th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which limited the House's choice to the top 3 electoral vote recipients. As a result, Clay was eliminated from contention. Clay, who also served as Speaker of the House, strongly opposed Jackson and believed his presidency would be disastrous for the country. He therefore supported Adams, who won the contingent election on the first ballot. Afterward, Adams appointed Clay as his Secretary of State, leading Jackson's supporters to accuse the 2 men of arranging a corrupt bargain. Once the congressional session ended, Jackson resigned from the Senate and returned to Tennessee. After John Quincy Adams struggled politically following the 1824 United States presidential election, supporters of Andrew Jackson began organizing a new political movement aimed at weakening Adams's administration and preventing him from winning a second term. In October 1825, nearly 3 years before the next election, the Tennessee legislature nominated Jackson for president. He quickly gained influential supporters in both the North and the South, including John C. Calhoun, who served as Jackson's vice president, and New York Senator Martin Van Buren. Adams's popularity in the South declined sharply after his administration supported the Tariff of 1828, which imposed high taxes on imported European goods. Many Southerners strongly opposed the tariff because they believed it favored Northern industry at the expense of the South. After taking office, Andrew Jackson embraced the principle of rotation in office, the idea that government positions should be regularly filled by new appointees rather than held for long periods by the same individuals. He also relied on the Tenure of Office Act of 1820, which limited the length of service for certain federal officeholders and gave the president greater ability to remove officials and appoint replacements. Critics referred to this practice as the spoil system, while supporters argued that it made government more responsive to the people. Jackson also pursued a national policy of Native American removal. Shortly after he became president, several southern states with long-standing conflicts with Native American nations passed laws extending state jurisdiction over native lands. Jackson supported these measures, arguing that native peoples should relocate west of the Mississippi River. This policy would later be formalized through the Indian Removal Act. Within weeks of his inauguration, Jackson also turned his attention to the Second Bank of the United States. Distrustful of the bank's political and economic influence, he began exploring ways to reduce its power and eventually replace it with a system he believed would better serve ordinary Americans. Andrew Jackson nominated a total number of 23 Article III federal judges, with 5 justices going to the Supreme Court and 18 judges to the United States District Courts. The main Supreme Court nominees were John McLean, nomination date, March 6, 1829. Henry Baldwin, nomination date, January 4, 1830. James M. Wayne, nomination date, January 6, 1835. Philip P. Barber, nomination date, December 28, 1835. Roger B. Taney, nomination date, December 28, 1835. On May 6, 1833, a former naval officer named Robert B. Randolph confronted Andrew Jackson and struck him in the face. Randolph was reportedly angered by Jackson's decision to dismiss him from the Navy over allegations of embezzlement. A more serious incident occurred on January 30, 1835. As Jackson was leaving the United States Capitol, an unemployed house painter named Richard Lawrence approached him and fired a pistol. The weapon misfired, and when Lawrence drew a second pistol, it also failed to discharge. Jackson responded by attacking Lawrence with his cane until bystanders intervened and restrained the would-be assassin. Lawrence was later found not guilty by reason of insanity and was committed to an institution. The incident was historically significant because it marked the first known assassination attempt against a sitting president of the United States. Today, Andrew Jackson is often remembered for his highly controversial policies toward both Native Americans and African Americans. Jackson was a slaveholder who owned a large plantation and participated in the buying and selling of enslaved people. He is especially known for signing the Indian Removal Act in 1830, which authorized the federal government to negotiate the relocation of Native American nations from their ancestral lands in the Southeast to territories west of the Mississippi River. In practice, this policy enabled the expansion of white settlement onto native lands and led to the forced removal of tens of thousands of Native Americans. These removals, including the Trail of Tears, resulted in widespread suffering and the deaths of thousands of Native people from disease, starvation, and exposure. After leaving office, Andrew Jackson retired to the Hermitage, where he remained active in politics despite declining health. He opposed policies that he believed would increase inflation and urged restrictions on the independent Treasury's ability to expand the money supply. Jackson also remained a loyal supporter of his political successor, Martin Van Buren. During the 1840 United States presidential election, he actively campaigned on Van Buren's behalf, hoping to secure his re-election. In addition, Jackson strongly advocated for the annexation of Texas. He argued that the region had historically been part of the Louisiana Purchase and therefore rightfully belonged within the United States. Although Texas was not annexed until after Jackson left the political stage, his support helped build momentum for its eventual admission to the Union in 1845. In his final years, Andrew Jackson suffered from several serious health problems, including dropsy, an old term for severe fluid retention, often caused by heart disease, tuberculosis, and heart failure. He died at the Hermitage on June 8, 1845, at the age of 78. At the time of his death, Jackson was surrounded by family members, close friends, and many of the enslaved people who lived and worked at the plantation. According to accounts of his final moments, Jackson expressed the hope that he would meet his loved ones again in heaven, including the enslaved people under his ownership. Jackson's death marked the end of one of the most influential and controversial political careers in American history. His supporters celebrated him as a champion of the common white voter and a defender of the Union, while his critics condemned his support for slavery and his policies toward Native Americans. His legacy continues to be debated by historians today. Andrew Jackson's legacy remains highly controversial in the 21st century. In recent years, activists have called for the removal of his statue in Lafayette Square, arguing that Jackson's policies toward Native Americans and his support for slavery make him an inappropriate public symbol. These debates reflect the extent to which Jackson is still associated with the forced removal of Native American peoples and the institution of slavery. The implementation of the Indian Removal Act led to the relocation of tens of thousands of Native Americans from the southeast to lands west of the Mississippi River. Historians estimate that thousands died during these removals, including on the Trail of Tears. Many descendants of the so-called five civilized tribes continue to live in what is now Oklahoma, where the removals had a lasting impact on the region's population and geography. At the same time, Jackson's supporters have emphasized other aspects of his presidency. They credit him with expanding political participation for many white male citizens, strengthening federal authority during challenges to the Union, and increasing the influence of the presidency within the federal government. As a result, Jackson is remembered as both a transformative and deeply divisive figure in American history, with historians continuing to debate the balance of his achievements and failures. So College Board, can we have AP Andrew Jackson? Thank you for watching this video and make sure to subscribe to Ironclads_Ashes.